So I'm speaking with composer Stephen Price, who has been working in the film industry for quite some time as a music programmer and editor. And Stephen has worked on films like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Batman Begins. He composed additional music for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which led him to be the composer for Edgar Wright's The World's End. Stephen is now behind the score to the box office hit Gravity from Alfonso Cuarón. His score was an essential part in the crafting of the science fiction thriller soundscape and structure, and was supremely effective at engaging the audience emotionally. Thanks, Stephen, so much for talking today.
Hello, how are you doing?
So since it's the first time we're talking, I would love to know why did you decide to pursue music, and what led to working in films and as a composer?
Oh, I mean, the first part of the question, it's kind of the only thing I've ever really done. I was lucky when I was growing up in that there were instruments lying around the house. Like there was a little plastic toy guitar thing, and there was a little keyboard, and I used to just doodle around and listen to records and sort of try and work out tunes and that sort of stuff that was playing on the radio. And that was kind of noticed by my mum and dad, so they kind of suggested, "Oh, do you want to try a guitar lesson?" And I was about 5 when I started doing that kind of thing, and just loved it and didn't really stop, and it just became the thing that Steve did. So I kind of went through all my youth and all my sort of college years and all that, just playing instruments, studying music, ended up going and doing music degree, that sort of thing. And then kind of, trying to work out how to get into the industry. And at first I thought that the record industry was going to be the one for me. I always really fancied doing record production. I thought that was, sort of arrangements, that kind of thing, and perhaps, songwriting, that side of the whole industry. And I started off in recording studios. I worked in a studio run by a guy called Andy Gill, who was a Gang of Four guitarist band over here. And that was kind of my first job. And I did that for a while, working with him, and it was great because he taught me loads about, how the studio works and how, engineering kind of works, just to work out. The computers were just coming in then as well, so recording into computers and manipulating sound. So I kind of got a start then. But kind of was getting a bit sort of concerned about the fact that, most bands we were working with weren't all that. And, wanted to try something different, didn't quite feel it was for me, and then got really lucky with an advert in the back of a magazine for a film composer who was looking for an assistant.
Wow.
And I got a job with Trevor Jones.
Oh, wow.
Off the back of that advert. And literally within a day or two of starting there, I was kind of left on my own to work out how the equipment worked, and started fiddling around with sort of moving notes around for the picture, and something just went sort of lit up in me, really. I kind of realized that was for me, and I just became obsessed with the relationship of music and picture and stories and all that, and that was kind of about 2000, 99, 2000.
Wow, that's
really
cool.
So it's been kind of quite a long haul, really, getting to where we are now, but it's been good laugh along the way.
That's a really cool story. So I absolutely loved Gravity. It was a very quick, lean, thrilling experience that was, executed masterfully from everyone behind and in front of the camera. How did you get involved with the project? How did you meet Alfonso?
Well, I knew a few people who were associated with the project, kind of in different capacities. I knew a couple of the assistant editors and that sort of thing. And when they got to the stage where they were looking to screen the film internally, they do test screenings and all that sort of stuff. They needed to do some music. They hadn't got any music at this point. And the idea was, can you come in for a couple of weeks just to help out, do some music stuff? So as far as I was concerned, this was a couple of weeks just to do whatever could be done. And I'd scored my first film by then. I'd done Attack the Block. So I was kind of hungry to get into that sort of thing more and drop the rest of the stuff that I'd done historically, the music editing or arrangements and all that, and just really concentrate on what I originally wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 weeks work on an Alfonso Cuarón film, great, yes please. So I went in and then had the meeting, and it was just great. We talked about the fact of the film sort of being set up in space. There's no sound in space, so what's music going to be? And he didn't want anything conventional. And basically, we had this amazing couple of hour meeting, and I came out of it thinking, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing now, because this isn't really a kind of music editing job, but I've not been asked to do anything else. So I just kind of started making stuff and trying a few things, and I very shyly played him the first batch, and he was like, "Oh, this who did this?" I was like, "Oh, it's me." and that kind of led to a bit of collaboration and a bit of throwing around ideas, and the 2 weeks turned in 6 weeks, and then after that he asked me to compose the film.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, it was a strange little period.
So, when you guys sat down to like collaborate and really kind of get into the meat of the film, what were those kind of initial conversations with Alfonso like? What did he, during the spotting session and everything, what did he want from you musically, and what did you want to do with the whole picture of the score?
I think that the great thing about the brief, well, I suppose the great and daunting thing about the brief at the start was that it was kind of, it was more things that we didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of, he didn't want it to sound like film music. He didn't want it to sound like a conventional action score. He didn't want to have any percussion or anything that you'd normally do with action. There's so much action in the film, and he didn't want to hear any of that stuff. And so it was kind of it was a lot of lists of these are the things you can't do. So now go away and try and find out what we could do for this film. And so it was it was a big blank canvas at first, and it was literally a case of just going to the studio and trying things. And I'd spend a long time sort of scratching my head and staring. Then I'd try a few things, and perhaps out of 10 things I tried melodic things, perhaps one would have something going for it, and I'd take that in and we'd discuss it. And it was just that went on, and we basically had a lot of to and fro for the best part of a year, which is quite a long time in kind of film school land.
Absolutely.
Any one thing. But it kind of took that long to try all the options and throw things out where it was appropriate, and try just experiment. Really, it was an amazing thing to be able to do. There were a lot of deadlines throughout because we were always heading to different screenings. There were a lot of tests along the way where you felt you needed to jump through hoops, because obviously it was a risk for everyone taking on sort of someone relatively untried like me.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of kept going through screenings, and you'd be very nervous for those moments, but each one you got through, and then on to the next challenge.
And when you started working on it, was the picture locked already, or because there's a lot of like long duration takes, and editing is such a big part of it as well, or was it still open to changes and everything, and you had to kind of work with the editorial flow?
Yeah, and it did keep changing right to the last, really, and it sort of, even on the last night of the mix, there were a couple of picture changes just to make me nervous. But it was constant to and fro. But it was the crew on Gravity. They'd all been on it for so long, and they were also involved and entwined in the project. And I think the editor did sort of the best part of 3 years on the film.
Wow.
So everyone kind of knew it backwards, and everyone was very sort of excited by it. And we all just we were all on the phone, and to the extent that if a picture change was going to be made towards the end, I might be able to say, if you gave me another 3 frames there, it would be brilliant. It would really save my day. So it was there were picture changes, but the shape of the film was there pretty early. You could kind of tell the feel of it from when I started. Those incredible long takes and the way the camera was moving sort of virtually, and you felt like you're up in space. So that was there to influence the writing of the score from the word go, really.
And the cinematography is, I think, Emmanuel Lubezki. He better get an Oscar or something. It was fantastic.
Oh, I think it's just genius. I mean, there's still, and I've obviously seen it, many times.
Yeah.
But it still makes you gasp, some of the shots they've got in there, and the way they've done it is so.
Oh, it's fantastic.
There's various bits out in the press, but it's amazing, I think.
And the one thing I noticed, I mean, and you mentioned a bit earlier, like quietness was a big part in the building of not just the quietness of the sound design, but kind of musically too. You have a lot of tones, and you tone it down to kind of create the tension and suspense and kind of the quietness and almost isolation of space. What was the challenge to know when to tone the score down? Did Alfonso kind of guide you in that, like, we don't want loud noises here, we want it to be quiet?
We kind of sort of staggered our way through it. We had various temp things during the process where we'd kind of put the whole film together, and the sound would come in, and we kind of test a few ideas out there. And there were a couple of times when we go, this is a space we can afford to take a bit of a breath and step back here. And often it was a case of stripping back, because I'd written in a very kind of layered way because of the way that the music was going to be treated in surround. Everything was very, very densely layered and sort of complex in the way it was constructed. And so often you'd kind of realize that, where you had, say, 10 things playing, if for that particular moment, perhaps you can strip it down to 2 or 3, and all of a sudden sort of interesting things would emerge from that. So it was like this big experiment of what's needed and where in the theatre you're going to put it. Mm-hmm. And the quietness, it kind of, the story did a lot of that, but sometimes the moments where we really emphasised the silence and really made the point of the isolation, they kind of developed as we went through it.
And I was also surprised at how kind of big the score kind of became towards the final act, it kind of mirroring the emotional flow of Sandra Bullock's character and echoing this theme of which I kind of noticed as rebirth, which is pretty prevalent in it, and I
Yeah.
picked up strongly. And these characters, we kind of jump into them right at the beginning. We kind of don't know who they are. So what were you kind of drawing on emotionally for these characters? We don't really know them. We kind of know them through the experience. But what was the thing about the characters that spoke to you the most as a storyteller?
I think that it's a funny one because you do kind of get you do feel you know them very quickly. 'Cause I think the simplicity of the setup is actually deceptive. The characters are incredibly fully formed as soon as you meet them, and certainly with Ryan's character, because I felt for the music you were with Ryan
Right.
for the vast majority of the film. You're let into her world very gradually, and that allowed me to thematically do that as well. And the very first notes you hear from Lisa Hannigan, the singer, is basically an ambient version of what will become the big theme at the end for Ryan. And we kind of start to develop that out through the film. And when she first mentions the reason why she's up in space and the reason why she'd kind of given up back down on Earth early in the film, you kind of get another little glimpse of that. And it kind of, the way the film was structured and the way the character developed allowed you to kind of just keep planting these things to hopefully make it all pay off at the end. So it's, I thought that the way that we learnt more about her and the way that she went through her journey through the film and kind of made the decision to live basically meant that the end of the film could be celebratory and basically honor and celebrate the decision she'd made really, and so it felt appropriate to go where we did.
Oh, and it was I was kind of in tears and in chills.
Oh, good.
All like it was emotional. I mean spoiler alert. I'm sure if anyone's listening and hasn't watched the film, please don't continue listening. But when they go through she's coming back to Earth and descending back, it's an emotional experience, and I think you brought the viewers on that journey as well. It was really great.
Well, I hope so. It's been fun sort of seeing. I watched the film with my wife for the first time last week in a screening over here, and yeah, it's quite nice when people cry because that was I think the hope for all of us with this film was that it's an experience. It's an emotional sort of thrill ride really, and it's been nice when people have connected with that and have gone on the journey really.
And I was just wondering if you could give any insight to the track titles on the last couple of tracks. I know we have, they're uniquely named. Aningak is one of them.
Aningang, I think is the basically he's it's the name of the Eskimo character. When again, spoiler alert, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But when Ryan is radioing back down to Earth and she has a conversation and she's going Mayday, Mayday. The person that she makes contact with is a guy called Aningang, who's an Eskimo. And there's actually another scene which isn't in the film, which was made separately for I believe it was on the DVD. It's a short film made by Alfonso Cuarón,
right.
Alfonso's son who wrote the film with him. And the other side of that conversation basically was filmed. And I did the score for that as well. And it's a nice little short, and it's strangely emotional in a different way. But it shows what's happening the other end of that call as Ryan calls home. So I'm looking forward to people seeing that.
Was that always intended to be a bonus feature on the Blu-ray, or was that originally in the full film?
Yeah, that was always going to be. I mean, I believe there was an interesting thing I read this week where Alfonso was saying how he'd had requests from the studio at various points to cut back to Earth, but it was never going to happen. I think with
Yeah.
the film. So that scene, Tanas definitely shot that with the Blu-ray in mind, and it does stand alone as its own thing, but it's a shame they can't show it after the film. I think it'd be great to have a little surprise after the film.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I was reading about that, and then you also have the last couple of tracks are also, I think they're named after real life spacecrafts, right? Soyuz, Tiangong, Shenzhou. Are these all they're Chinese spacecrafts?
Yeah, well, they're the crafts in the film. So
Right,
we kind
right.
of with the score. I mean, these cues were obviously called sort of very different things when we were making it. But when we were putting the soundtrack album together, it was kind of how can we best conceal what happens here? So we
That's
went for the
that's
craft
good.
names
I
to
know.
do that because it was otherwise there were massive spoilers on the on the album.
That's true. When I looked at the soundtrack for The Sixth Sense, very recently, and the last track is Malcolm is Dead, and I'm like, well,
Oh no, really?
yeah. I was like,
Oh, that's a shame.
I, I was like, wow, I can't believe this didn't upset people at the time. James Newton Howard, come on, get on that.
That must have been an afterthought somewhere along the line. But yeah,
uh,
that's that would be disappointing. I think with this one, the score was coming sort of released online about 2-3 weeks before anyone had seen the film,
right, yeah,
and
usually that's
really we were
happens.
quite advanced in the soundtrack CD by then, so it was only a we shouldn't do that, should we? Sort of moment.
Well, the whole film is breathtaking, and you're such a huge part of that. I mean, the film's emotional resonance is because of your score. But before we wrap
Okay.
up, I always like to ask composers this one question: if you could score any film ever made with no disrespect to the original composer or the score itself, which film would you choose?
Oh, that's tricky. I mean, the thing is, a lot of the films I really love, a lot of the big reason I love them is because of the score.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
And I
yeah.
would hate to revisit something and make it slightly worse. that would be that would be awful. I mean, the first films I remember like really being struck by the music were like the Back to the Future things because I was a little too young for Star Wars.
Uh huh.
But so Back to the Future was bang on for me. I was kind of probably 7 or 8 when that came out and watched it for ages. And I think they're great, but I think it would be awful if I rescored it because it wouldn't be what it is now.
Well, I mean,
Um,
it's just what kind of
and so the
playground?
only other option is to choose a film with a terrible score, isn't it? Really? And I wouldn't want to do that either. But we'll go with Back to the Future and just hope that I kind of don't do too shabby a job. And
That's a
yeah,
good answer. I think yeah, that's a great answer. I love Back to the Future. Helen Silvestri is brilliant.
yeah, I think that's they're great, those films, and sort of such fun things. They show them on TV here all the time on some
Yeah.
cable channel, and it's those sort of things where you end up I'll see 2 minutes and then an hour later you're still kind of
Well,
you know.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time and for chatting today. It was a great pleasure and honor to talk to you. So thank you so much, and congratulations on all the success that Gravity is getting and deserves.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.